1800s, two boys grew up in a modest home in the town of Billerica, Massachusetts. Their father sold eyeglasses for a living. It was a humble, quiet, seemingly normal family, but something wasn't quite right about Edgar and Arthur Sanborn. The brothers were exceptionally intelligent. They were so studious and well-read that one of them, Edgar, had applied and been accepted to the prestigious Harvard University in the nearby city of Cambridge, but the family was too poor to pay for Edgar's tuition. The brothers' love of reading and studying was obsessive, and one night it literally drove them insane. While working on an English translation of a Greek Bible, they got into an argument which escalated into a violent eruption. When their parents tried to intervene, the brothers went to a closet and retrieved two revolvers. They held their parents at gunpoint for the entire night, both remaining eerily silent for nearly 8 hours. Worried about the safety of themselves and their neighbors, the Sanborn parents left their home to request help from the town constable. Meanwhile, the brothers had locked the doors of the house, and when the constable arrived with backup, he had to break down the door. After several violent hours, both boys were finally restrained by police and transported to a local insane asylum. A few years later, Edgar Sanborn managed to escape captivity from a mental hospital in Worcester, Massachusetts. He robbed and set fire to a nearby railway station before heading east towards his hometown. Edgar spent the next few months burglarizing homes in Billerica and the surrounding towns and looting capture by local police. His biggest score was a treasure trove of jewelry, furs, and silverware from a wealthy Billerica estate, which he buried in the woods near his East Billerica home before leaving Massachusetts and heading to the New York area. In New York City, Sanborn continued on his crime spree, which included robbing Mary Baker Eddy, the internationally known founder of the Christian Science religion. He moved on to New Jersey, where he was finally arrested in the town of Mount Holly on a breaking and entering charge. Sanborn refused to identify himself to the Mount Holly police. They kept him imprisoned while they circulated his picture to the other police departments across several nearby states in the hope that there was a bounty on his head. Eventually, one of those circulars made its way to the Worcester, Massachusetts Police Department. They contacted the Mount Holly police and informed them that there were multiple warrants for Sanborn in Massachusetts. The Mount Holly police were disappointed to learn that there was no reward being offered for Sanborn's capture, and they were in no hurry to transport the prisoner back to Massachusetts at their own expense. Meanwhile, Sanborn had hatched a plan that would entice the New Jersey police into releasing him. He told two police officers about the treasure he'd buried in his hometown and offered to sign a confession for all his crimes if they would take him to it. They would divvy up the treasure and go their separate ways. The two officers, Mount Holly Deputy Sheriff Fleetwood and New Jersey State Detective Parker, agreed to the deal and quietly transported him to Massachusetts. When they arrived at Sanborn's home, Edgar asked Parker to retrieve two revolvers from the house. While Parker was in the house, Sanborn, who was handcuffed to Fleetwood, led the deputy into the woods until they reached a fence. Sanborn explained that the treasure was buried just on the other side. After Fleetwood climbed over the fence, separating the two men, Sanborn managed to unfasten the handcuffs. He took off running, and Fleetwood fired a shot which hit him in the arm. Meanwhile, Parker knew he'd been had when Sanborn and Fleetwood didn't return to the Sanborn house for him. He also knew he would risk punishment for his illegal activities by reporting Sanborn's escape. But out of concern for the safety of Fleetwood, as well as the general public, he felt he had no choice but to notify local police. What followed was an extensive 24-hour manhunt through the woods of Billerica and surrounding towns. Finally, Edgar Sanborn was captured and sent back to the Worcester facility he'd escaped from. Deputy Sheriff Fleetwood was found unharmed. Since Edgar Sanborn spent the rest of his life locked up, it's unlikely that he ever retrieved his buried treasure. For many years, treasure hunters dug through the East Billerica woods, which have long since been razed and replaced by new streets and homes. Sanborn's treasure, as it came to be known, has never officially been recovered.